With apologies to Steve Goodman, I'm calling this the disappearing railroad blues, as Alex mentioned, and you all probably know. The MRL lease has been terminated 35 years early, and sometime in this year, the BNSF will be taking over the railroad. They actually they bought a few of the branch lines 25 years ago, and apparently they're leasing those back to BNSF. So I first visited the railroad in 1993 with Bill Kaufman and Dwayne Litzenberger, and I just love the scenery. I love the all EMD roster. They kind of have a classic paint scheme that usually was very clean. And so I've made about a dozen trips since then with this various group of people that you see here. And when I heard the news, I decided if it's going to disappear, I have to make one more visit to try to document some of the places that I hadn't been, and in particular focus on the trains that had MRL power. And so we're going to tour from west to east in sections, and I'll have a mix of older photographs and photos from the recent trip. All right, we're going to start on the far western end of the railroad. The MRL starts in Sandpoint and then follows the Clark Fork River from the Lake Pend Oreille to Paradise. So that's the first section we're going to look at. This was in 2005. This is the far northeast section of Lake Pend Oreille, where there's a causeway. That's a nice photo location. And this is a westbound, even 10 years after the merger, we still had war bonnets running on the BNSF trains here. You don't see any MRL trains this far west since they discontinued the runs to Sandpoint about 10 years ago. From the south end or railroad east end of the causeway, this is a view from October of 22 of a coal train that was rerouted. It was going from Spirit Lake, Montana to Roberts Bank, and they couldn't unload it at Roberts Bank, so they turned around and sent it east to Alma, Wisconsin. We're going to see this train later. This stretch of the railroad crosses the Clark Fork River on a number of bridges and some causeways. This is in October 2007 with a former Santa Fe war bonnet interrupting this nice Cascade Green consist on an eastbound train. This is what it looked like in 2002. All those interesting paint schemes are gone, and it's all BNSF orange these days for the most part. Once you get east of Thompson Falls, you were able to see the MRL power on what we call the gas locals. This was probably the most popular train to photograph in the Pacific Northwest for a long time because of that MRL power that was interesting. It ran on a predictable schedule twice a day. This is back in 2005 with 3 SD35s, which was kind of a rare consist to see back in those days. A couple years later, in 2007, just turned 180 degrees, and this was the view. And here we have an SD45 and a SD78, which started to infiltrate the motive power roster on the MRL about that time. One of my favorite spots was this S-curve near Plains, where you could see the river in the background. here at Plains itself, there were cantilever bridges on each end of the siding. There were only 4 of them the last time we visited here and at Hope. So this was always a spot to get a shot. This was an empty coal train heading back to the Powder River. Here we are, the same location, the other side of the tracks. This was with a pair of SE70 Aces, which was standard power on the gas local. This is the eastbound train. This is back on that first trip in October of '93, when it was still the BN. It had rights over the MRL with a C30-7 and the B unit following. This is entering the yards at Paradise. You've seen this photo before, but I thought it was worth it to show it again. Back in the 90s, there were semaphores along this stretch of line, and here were 2 we were able to photograph, one at Belknap and the other at Quinn's.
You know if they're still operational?
No, the semaphores are all down. They're all down. They've been going probably for close to 20 years now, I think. The next stretch we'll look at is from Paradise to Missoula. At Paradise, the line splits, and I'll talk about that branch, if you will, later. This was not part of the original Northern Pacific when it was built. Originally, the Northern Pacific went over Navarro Hill. They had a branch along the Clark Fork from Missoula that went to Wallace, but operating over the grade of Navarro Hill, which was 2.2% ruling westbound, was challenging. So they connected the main line at Paradise with the branch line at St. Regis. And that's now part of the 4th sub in their water level route that's primarily their main line. And this is an interesting stretch of railroad because it's fairly remote, but it has good railroad or highway access. This is back in 2006. This is the Paradise local. At one point, these locals ran west to Thompson Falls, east over the 10th subdivision to Dixon and up to Polson. The line to Polson's actually been torn up, and they ran east along the main line as far as St. Regis and Superior. But with the dwindling lumber business in this area, these locals have all been discontinued. And what little local traffic is run is carried on the gas locals. But back here, we got a pair of GP9s on local getting ready at Paradise. And here's that train crossing the Clark Fork River on this through truss bridge. This is another train, another day, but this is along the Clark Fork Tool, which is again a remote area, but easily accessed. You can see the highway over here. So it was a great place to photograph. Another nice spot to catch traffic on this line was an overpass at St. Regis. Right behind me is the former Milwaukee Road Bridge, which has long been abandoned. But here you can see, pulpwood cars, lumber cars, but this traffic has really dwindled. Another location from that bridge, or another view from that bridge, of a BNSF train with a couple of KCS units back in the fall of 2006. When I was out there in '93 with Bill and Dwayne, we happened to run across a coke train which originated at East Billings. It was a BNSF train. I'm not sure where the coke actually came from, somewhere out east, I'm sure. And it ran to Roberts Bank and was exported from there. And even though this was a BN train at that point, it had MRL power. And here's that train crossing the Clark Fork River at Paradise. The highway bridge is off to the left there. And this is what it looks like in 2002. This was the coal train we saw earlier. And this was worth following because the nose of this locomotive had just recently been repainted. Even though they repainted it, they kept the Heritage 2 scheme. And here you can see nice job they did. The rest of the power is not quite as shiny. Again, current era, this is the gas local, which decided they were going to take down the fourth sub on this particular day, maybe because of traffic on the other line. Normally it goes up to Navarro Hill, moving at track speed across the Clark Fork River from a location called Quinn's.
Is that gas destined for the East Coast for shipping overseas, or do you know, Jim?
No. There is a pipeline, and I'm not sure where the pipeline originated, but it heads west through this area. It traverses an Indian reservation, and at some point, the tribal elders decided they did not want this pipeline for whatever reason, environmental perhaps. And so there's a gap in the pipeline. So the MRL stepped up and they load these trains in Missoula from the terminal of the pipeline, transport it to Thompson Falls and reload it into the pipeline for heading west. And sometimes it's aviation fuel, sometimes it's oil. Apparently it can handle a multitude of different petroleum products.
The refinery is in eastern Montana. It's basically helps reduce the cost of gasoline on the Northwest by a significant amount by having that Montana oil get out there.
All right, thanks, Jay. So it's a connection between two ends of the pipeline that were severed because of the issue with the tribe.
Kind of like switching narrow gauge trucks back and forth with standard gauge.
Yeah, and it's normally about 20 cars, and it's basically a shuttle operation. They're called in Missoula at 4 a.m. and 4 p.m. and they head west, unload, come back, and shortly thereafter they turn and run another. Just in 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, for the most part. From St. Regis to Missoula is a very scenic area, but unfortunately there's not a lot of access. There are some great drone shots I've seen of some bridges, but I don't have a drone, so I don't have any pictures in the area. Here we are at Missoula, and this is the Darby local, which ran on about a 60-mile branch down to Darby, switching a couple of industries in addition to the mill down there. These look like pulp cars. It ran twice a week. Again, that business has really dried up. And so all traffic on that line was discontinued in 2013. So that's been embargoed. This is some switching in the yard in 2006. And I'm not sure exactly how this all works, but this is, you've heard remote control locomotives. So this is a remote control caboose. So I'm assuming the electronic gear is in the caboose. It's connected to this Jeep 9. And here you can see it switching some logs, presumably from that branch down to Darby.
What's the L on the mountain to signify?
I knew at one point, I mean, we're in Missoula, so it's obviously not from Missoula. I'm not sure. And
they do that out in New Mexico and Arizona, I think, put those letters on mountains.
Yeah, well, apparently, what they've done is they've just scarred the soil and the brush off there, and that's the underlying rock there. So I'm told. All right, so we'll move on to our next section. This is Navarro Hill, and this connects Missoula with Paradise, which is the original Northern Pacific main line, and was at one point under BN or maybe NP. I got the date here somewhere. Was basically embargoed, but then when MRL took over, they rebuilt the line, and it's used for the gas locals, and it's used for eastbound empty coal and grain trains. A question for you: is this? Do you guys see this bar on the top of the screen? Is that showing up on your screen as well as mine? Because I don't know if I can get rid of that.
That's not on mine.
I don't see a bar.
You don't
No.
see a bar? Okay. Okay, you don't, good. All right, so Navarro Hill, and this was taken at sunrise up near Dixon. Those interested. Okay, so here, this is just east of Paradise, and this is one of those empty grain trains, which you see a lot. Here, it's on the north side of the river, the opposite side from the highway. This is the Flathead River, which actually comes out of Glacier National Park. A little further east, representation of the other traffic, empty coal hoppers. Back in 2006, this is a really scenic area with a highway that basically parallels the entire route, so it's great for photography. A little further east at Perma. This is the gas local you saw earlier, again, 3 SD35s in a very scenic area. Here's the highway up here, so you're just a few steps away. And more recent times, here we are now, we have the SD70 Aces, of which I think they have 16 of them with the gas local and some nice fall foliage near the town of Ravalli. And there's a bridge across the Jacko River at Ravalli, and this is a westbound. This is what's called the night gas back in 2018. On our last trip, the train left a little late, and this was the last shot we got with some nice alpenglow on the mountains in the background at Ravalli. And here you can see a couple of center beam flats heading somewhere along the route because they're not running any locals, and this has to deliver whatever they need to the industries in the area.
Guess horses don't scare like cattle.
No, they hung around there, horns and all. We were at a grade crossing. This guy was making a lot of noise. This is climbing up the grade out of Missoula to Marin's Trestle, which unfortunately I've never really gotten a good picture of. This is a place called Y, and there's no Y there. And this is the train leaving Missoula, giving us a little cloud of smoke just for effect. There is a yard in Missoula. It's the crew change point, and it's the headquarters of the railroad. I'm not going to show anything there because it's a pretty ordinary looking place. The scenery is much better other places. All right, so here we're going to do the section from Missoula to Elliston. Elliston is the foot of Mullen Pass. This is one of my favorite photos from this area. You've seen a version of this before with the used cow lot, something you don't see in Maryland. So I-90 and the MRL follow the Clark Fork River and also the abandoned Milwaukee Road east to Garrison. There's a couple of tunnels in the area. And then from Garrison to Elliston, it goes up the Little Blackfoot River. And again, another parallel highway, US 12. So really good access to the railroad for photography. Again, an area with a lot of BNSF traffic, but except for the Laurel and Missoula trains that are the road freights for MRL, it's all going to be BNSF power. Here we are in October of 1993. This is the Laurel to Missoula heading east at Rock Creek, Montana. You can see I-90 over here. This is the eastbound Spokane to Kansas City train on BN at the time at the Nimrod detector coming out of one of the tunnels. Get a little closer to Garrison another day. This is the same Spokane to Kansas City train running over MRL trackage. The BN had a whole fleet of these that were fairly predictably scheduled. Nowadays, it's a little more random what BNSF sends through here.
This is former Northern Pacific trackage. Is that right, Jim?
Yes, yes. The entire MRL is Northern Pacific trackage, except for one stretch out of Helena that a local uses that we'll see later, which was the Great Northern's access from Helena to Butte.
So this would go through maybe Livingston. That was a major town on the Northern Pacific, I think.
Well, this Missoula is behind the train, and Helena is over Mullen Pass to the east. Those are the two major cities on either side of this particular train. Yeah. One of the interesting opportunities at Garrison was to catch the Montana Western, which at one point ran that branch line. Here it is with the least rarest railroad power. It's now I think it's now a BNSF branch. It connects with the UP at Silver Bow. But this is long faded into a history here, these GP9s. As you head east, now we're in the Little Blackfoot River Valley, again, a very scenic area. This is Avon, westbound solid grain train with nice new BN hoppers. Santa Fe unit stuck in there. This was before the merger, but you would occasionally see them swapping power. Not much further east, we've got another westbound solid grain train, this time with a BNSF ST75M on the point. And a little further east again, with the more BNSF C40 or 44, I think, power on the point with an NS stuck in. To go to the current day, this is at Drummond, which was our first stop after we left Missoula. The fog had not lifted. There's a grain train coming out of the fog. We headed east to a place called Jen's, where there's a bridge over the tracks. This is a very popular photo spot with what's referred to as the second most photographed barn in Montana. The first one presumably being the one in East Glacier at the base of the two Medicine Bridges. This was merchandise train from Spokane to Laurel, and unusual, and it had EMD power on the point, so we decided this was worth a chase. So we followed and got numerous shots. This is through some nice fall foliage at Avon, where we saw those trains earlier in the program, and multiple years earlier chronologically. We had lunch along the tracks there until this westbound came by and had a KCS unit in the consist. So we decided we would chase this thing back west. So this is a facing shot from the passenger side, the navigator seat in our Tahoe. This is at Bradley. This is a location that had a siding put back in after numerous years. They just did it in the last couple of years. We also saw a lot of track work around Bozeman to Logan. And I can't imagine MRL is spending a lot of money to fix up trackage that they're going to turn over to BNSF, but we did see a BNSF inspection train in the area. So I have a feeling BNS might be footing the bill for this track work to get ready for the takeover whenever the STB says it's all right. This is at Garrison, an overpass that just kind of gives you a nice view of the valley. It's just a really scenic area. That's the same train. And then back where we started this section at Rock Creek, the Laurel to Pasco BNSF through freight. All right, so we'll move to Mullen Pass. And I'm going to go east to west here, just seems to work out better in describing it. This is Montana's Big Hill, as they call it, where the MRL crosses the Continental Divide. And you've got the hard surface road into the opening of the pass, but then it's gravel, and then the gravel deteriorates and it gets really bad, but you can, with a high clearance vehicle and all-wheel drive, actually follow the railroad across the pass for the most part. And it's just a beautiful area. And so we're going to do it right now. This is Helena. This is a crew change point. This is the lineup on this particular day in September, with LM over there on the left, BNSF grain train on the right. I'm not sure what was in the middle, but you usually can hang out here, see what's getting ready to leave, and get in position for your photographs. This was on the first trip I made out here. This was the first MRL train I ever saw, and maybe this is why I fell in love with the railroad. We got an SD40, an SD45-2, actually two of them, an SD19-1, an SD9, another SD9, and a GP9. I said, damn, this is an interesting railroad. I'm going to enjoy photographing it. This is at Tobin, which is close to the first grade crossing you'll have access to. You move up the hill a little bit to East Austin, where there's a siding where trains are often waiting to come downhill if there's something heading west. This is BN 196, which is the Pasco to Minneapolis train, again with an interesting set of power on the front. And I'm guessing these 4 MRL units are front end helpers that probably shoved the train over the pass and then hooked onto this BN train coming east. You go a little further and the railroad sweeps away from the road, but there are some ways to get in there if you're industrious, as Bill Kaufman and I were on this trip. And so this is the Laurel to Missoula train heading up the hill with, again, a typical MRL constants back in the day, you know, SD40, SD40-2s, SD45s. Just made the railroad really interesting. We're camped out over here for the last train on the other side of the tracks. You can get some elevation. And this is a Missoula to Laurel train coming down from Iron Ridge into Austin with, you can see a lot of MRL cars in the consist. You don't see that many MRL freights or freight cars in even this particular train now. Apparently, the local traffic has just really dried up all over, and that's probably one of the reasons they decided to give up the lease. That and the $2 billion that BNS offered Dennis Washington, who owns the railroad, who's 82, who probably figured he might as well spend it now instead of letting his kids have it.
Is that Mullen's Pass all surface, or are there any tunnels on it through it to get through, or?
There's a tunnel. You'll see it. We'll get there.
Okay.
We're heading uphill. Okay, so this is Skyline. This is we're getting close to the tunnel. This is a Birmingham to Seattle BNSF train with a couple of MRL helpers on the front end. And you can see here, this is a 737 fuselage, which gets moved on a regular basis, multiple ones in some trains from Wichita to Seattle for a final construction by Boeing. So Skyline's back there. Now we're at Skyline Trestle. This is another Birmingham to Pasco train, another day with GP39E, the Sharks from LMX. They were so popular amongst us fans back in the day. Right behind me is the portal of the east portal of Mullen Tunnel. So let's go over to that pass. Later, we'll drop back to the more recent stuff on the east side and then move on to the tunnel and the west side. So this is in September of 2018. This is another Laurel to Missoula train, again with the MRL power with these are probably, let's see, I got it written down somewhere. I think these are mostly SD40s. There might be a 45 stuck in there. But this was the kind of consist that we love to see. Yeah, this is a 40, a 45 and another 40. Okay, same contest at East Austin. It's a nice evening light. Here we are last fall in October of 22. This is the Laurel to Missoula, same location, but now we got two SD70 aces. Most of that older power is disappearing. Similar view to what we saw a couple of slides back coming down from Iron Mountain, a BNSF grain train. Oops. And here's a loaded grain train heading west with a pretty typical MRL mid-train helper set of 4 SD70 aces. And here we are at Skyline Trusto, which we saw earlier. I was over here photographing back in '93. This is the rear end helper shoving a coal train over the trestle. This is what it looked like from ground level in October of 2022, last fall, with a BNSF grain train. And there's the helper mid-train, again, 4 SD70 aces. All right, now we're going to move on to the west portal of Mullen, and this is the portal as of 2006. This ground was somewhat unstable, and they eventually cut it back, and it doesn't appear anywhere near as interesting as it did back then. But this was a great place because they're climbing up the grade. The summit is right here at the west side of the portal, and you could not only see and hear these trains throttling uphill. Here's a couple of SD60s on the point.
That's a lot of coal smoke standing. Wow.
Yeah, a lot of, well, and you know, and maybe some of this diesel smoke too. Because they're really working. They're really working coming up this grade. Back in 2007 in October, I was out with Dwayne Litzenberger, and we were in Helena, and it was just a terrible rainy day. It was just god awful, and we decided, well, we got to get out of town. We'll head west because we were flying out of Spokane. As we went up the pass on the main road, we could see that it was snowing, and snowing hard. Unfortunately, the access to the summit from the west side, even though it's gravel, is at pretty good condition. So we were able to get up here and get a bunch of trains in the snow. So this is the westbound BNSF grain train with Santa Fe war bonnet on the point. And here's the Laurel to Missoula train sitting in the siding at Blossburg, waiting for an eastbound. This road here is the same road there, in much more pleasant weather in July of 2005. And this is what it looks like up at the top of Mullen Pass. And this is the chase crew from the last trip in the fall of 2002. Me, my brother Jay, and my friend Dwayne. All right, next section will be Helena to Bozeman, and after the drama of Mullen Pass, this is pretty sedate. It's a 1% grade up to Winston, but the weather can be rather interesting, and it was worth spending a morning here because you wanted to be in Helena in the early afternoon, and we'll show you why. But we got a few nice photographs here in interesting weather. This is a westbound coal train at Louisville, and here's another westbound train from a different grade crossing. The reason to hang around Missoula in the morning is that in the afternoon they run a local with a GP9 and an SD40. And I think this is the only GP9 that's running on a main or a branch line. You don't see too many GP9s running these days anywhere, and having a major railroad use one was worth the trip here. So this is what was called the Prickly Pear Local because it went down to went down the Prickly Pear Creek to a cement factory in Montana City. There was also a smelter, I think it was an iron smelter, which has since been closed. So there's only one customer on this line. Again, another reason why the MRL is giving up their lease. So this train comes out of Helena. He's got consists for this local here. These cars belong somewhere down the main line. He's going to leave them there, and he's going to go down with two cars down the branch to Montana City. Here he is. We're paralleling him down the highway on the way to Montana City. He gets down to the plant. These cars have already been positioned on the runaround track by the plant switcher to return back to Helena. So he shoves into the cement plant. And then he pulls out empty and takes those cars on the runaround track and takes them back to Helena. This is sort of the fringes of what's left of the smelter. So at Helena, he leaves these cars on the branch, shoves the cars that he left onto the main, and then reverses direction to go up Winston Hill and to the one industry that's on that line, which is a limestone plant. So here he is at Winston Hill, or the summit of Winston Hill, at a place called, amazingly enough, Winston. So here's the limestone plant, Gray Mountain limestone. They mine the limestone about 5 miles away, ship it in by truck, do some sorting and whatever they do to limestone. I don't know if they grind it, I would guess. Some shipped out by truck, and a fair amount is shipped out by rail. So he's going to put some empties in and pick up some loads. So this was nice to watch, and nice evening light here. So once he finishes working here, he continues down the line a bit. This is a bridge across the Missouri River. He goes into the town of Townsend, where he will cut off his train and then run around. And I don't know that there's any business that he works here. We didn't see any activity at all suggesting that any of these elevators were active. But this was kind of an interesting operation to see with that GP9. The next interesting spot as you head east is Lombard Canyon, where the Northern Pacific and now the MRL follow the Missouri River on a rather short but tortuous trip through this canyon. This is the old Milwaukee Road right here that crossed the NP and headed into the canyon, emerging further east. This section of the bridge was removed and used to provide the bridge for the second track through here. So this is an eastbound empty grain train. Looking the other way, here's a westbound coal train. One of these is the former Milwaukee Road Bridge. I'm not sure which one. This is a rather difficult area to get into. There are roads, but very steep, very rocky. Wouldn't attempt it with anything but a solid SUV. I walked down a little bit of ways here where there's a road, and because we knew this oil train was coming. Here's the Milwaukee Bridge here to get this shot. On our last trip, we were in Logan, and we knew the LM was going to be leaving, so we hustled up to the other end of Lombard Canyon. It's a 45-minute drive, and unfortunately, the train came about 10 minutes too early to have some really great sun on it, but nonetheless, it was a nice shot, and I'm glad that we made the effort to get this. So now we'll move down to Logan. Logan's on the main line. This is where a number of locals run. This is probably the busiest set of branch lines they still have. This line here up to Pipestone and Spy Rock, this is the former Northern Pacific main line to Butte that their passenger trains took. They still have a quarry at Pipestone. This line to Alder has been cut back, I think, as far as Twin Bridges for occasional use. They still have businesses they serve at Harris and Sappington, Willow Creek, and Three Forks, and we have been able to catch a couple of trains in this network. So let's take a look at those. This is the town of Logan, where the local is based, and this is kind of, I'm a modeler. This would be a great town to model because it's got lots of interesting trackage, some businesses, but is rather compact. This line is serviced by GP35s, which is one of the reasons we wanted to spend some time here to photograph those locomotives. This was in 2017. They were doing some track work then, and they're bringing some track equipment out to the work train that was further east of here at Belgrade and Manhattan. And this is that work train. They call it, these work trains are called the Jimbo. I'm not sure where that name came from. It's the water tower in Manhattan.
A little less population density than the other Manhattan.
Yes, yes. Even less than Manhattan, Kansas, I'm sure. This is a one big mistake we made on this trip. We wanted to get a train going through Jefferson Canyon, and it was lousy light heading west in the morning, so we got ahead of it. And there was a stretch for about 5 miles where we couldn't see the track, where we had to make a move to get in position, and we were pretty comfortable that it hadn't arrived yet and we wouldn't be missing anything. So we went to the east end of the canyon and waited for it, thinking it was come west, when actually it had gotten by us. So this is the only picture we really got in the canyon, but this is, tortuous, scenic area with a highway right along the tracks. I'm sure there's some great shots. Well, I know they are, I've seen them in the books, but this was the best we could do coming out of Jefferson Canyon. This is at Sappington, which is another agricultural community. We caught this train again. On this trip, we got another local out of Logan, working the plant at Three Forks. This is a talc plant, I believe, that they service. Here is switching. Somebody's got their microphone on. If you know who you are, please turn it off. And then here's on another trip about 5 years ago. This is the local heading down to Harrison. And yes, it's not MRL, but this is westbound grain train. This is the DPU heading into Lombard Canyon. And I just put this shot in because I thought it was nice. This is the Gallatin River, which heads over to Bozeman. We're not far from where the Gallatin, the Madison, and the Jefferson form the Missouri River. So if you're a history buff, you can just imagine Lewis and Clark and their expedition somewhere back in that canyon 220 years ago. All right, Bozeman Pass. Unlike Mullen Pass, that has a twisting mainline and some high trestles, Bozeman's a reasonably straight shot over the Bridger Mountains. Again, it kind of works best to follow it from west to east. Start with some older photos first. Now, this is back in June of 1994. This is the Birmingham to Pasco BNSF train with MPI 9046 on the pointed. Bill and I chased, I think, from Laurel all the way to Bozeman because it was just something interesting. This is just coming out of the area around Livingston, which is back here around the curve. Absaruka Mountains in the background. This is a shot. If you look through the Northern Pacific books, you'll see steamers climbing up or streamliners climbing up here. Turn around the other. Yes.
The Livingston station is still there, isn't it? It's pretty spectacular.
Yes. Livingston station is still there. I'm not sure what's in it, but it's, there's some business in it. And downtown Livingston is a neat place. It's got a lot of Art Deco signage and architecture. And there's a great steakhouse in Livingston. So good place to visit. So you turn around from that shot, and then here's eastbound coal hoppers coming down into Livingston back in 2006 with a lot of EMD power, 70 Mac. It's probably a Chili Mac. That's a SD 60M. There's an EMD SD60. 1999, we got a train heading uphill with an interesting consist shortly after the BN Santa Fe merger. This is probably all grain cars. Nope, it's not, because this is the same train. You can see hoppers and whatnot. This is one of the four F-45s that MRL had. They were originally BN. This one spent some time in Wisconsin Southern. Again, an interesting helper set heading out of Livingston. There are 4 access points west of Livingston to get in to photograph, or you can just climb up the embankment from the interstate. This is at Orea Creek Road. This is a pair of GB35s. It's kind of a Missouri Pacific looking paint scheme, but it was applied by Omnitrax for lease units, and the MRL leased them and then actually bought them and repainted them. Same location. Many years later, we got a head end helper on eastbound grain empty with MRL's newest power at that time. Next stop up the hill is Flynn Creek Road. This is the Laurel to Missoula train with an SD45 and an SD Ace. From the same location at ground level, I processed in black and white because there wasn't a lot of color with the backlight, but I kind of like, the sand, the distortion from the exhaust here. You head up to the next spot, which is Sunflower Lane. Here's that helper set with 393 on the end. This is the Muir siding. You'll often see meets here where train heading west will wait for the train heading east will wait for the westbound that's doing all the work coming up the hill. The other end of that siding, right before the tunnel, we've got an MRL train, probably the LM, with an interesting contest again with F-45 on the head end. Looking the other way, Bozeman Tunnel is right around the corner behind the locomotive. Here's I-90. This is a helper set on the rear, shoving. They usually cut off the helpers right at the tunnel on the fly. Sometimes they'll follow them the other way down the hill as well. If you cross over the summit, here's it west end. This tunnel here was built, I think that was the first tunnel, and that was replaced in 1945 by the new Bozeman Tunnel, which is a little lower and a little shorter. Somewhere I wrote down when that was built, but I can't find it. Okay, so let's go to the present time. We were leaving to head out to Logan out of Bozeman, but we happened to see the Missoula to Laurel train heading east, and it had one of the veterans units on it. We knew it would be working at Bozeman and we could get ahead of it, so we decided to lay in wait for it. So here it's coming out of Bozeman. Here are the helpers in the pocket, and the local or the LM will pass our location through the signals, stop, and they'll put the helpers on. So they'll move up, and then they'll head up the pass. This is a little bit outside of Bozeman. We followed it up the hill. Unfortunately, the weather didn't hold up, but it was still a nice chase. This is about to duck into the tunnel, the west end of the tunnel at Bozeman. This is his helper set. That's an SDP 40, I believe. That was one of those Great Northern units that they got, that they used in passenger service until they discontinued it. It had a steam generator in the rear. It's squared off. It's the last one of those that's running that I'm aware of. And here he is coming down the hill at Maria Creek Road and heading in to Livingston. On another day, again, we headed out towards Logan. This time we saw another Missoula to Laurel train. This time the weather looked like it would be much better. We had some great fall foliage, so we decided to give chase. He also worked Bozeman. We headed up the hill and waited at Trail Creek Road to get a photograph of him here with the aspens turning a nice golden color on a beautiful day. A little further up the hill, another nice fall shot. We took the crooked, bumpy back road because we'd already sort of made our decision having followed him up the hill instead of getting right back on the interstate. So as we came out, we found our way blocked by this westbound coal train. But as soon as this guy showed up, he started to move. So we didn't have to wait very long to continue on to Livingston. Our goal in Livingston was to catch the once a week Bozeman to Livingston and return local, which uses GP35s. While waiting, we saw the only active SD45 working a work train in Livingston. There's a lumber yard in Livingston that burned down a few months ago, again, wiping off a lot of traffic. There's a little spur out of downtown that goes down to the lumber yard. So no traffic there. So there wasn't much to be running on this train. Here he's putting together, it's consist of a few flat cars in Livingston. That was his train. 2 Jeep 35s on the point. Here he is heading out of town. This is the same location where we saw that MPI unit with the mountains in the background earlier, back in '94. So it wasn't much of a train, but he had 2 GP35s and it was a nice day. So we followed it. Here he is at West End. The tunnel is back here. And then on the last legs into East Bozeman. If you have Dale Sanders' Northern Pacific book, the cover photo with the F units, I believe, is taken right about here because those mountains in the background look exactly like they do on that photo. All right, we're getting close here. This is a section from Livingston to Laurel. This will be the last part of the railroad we'll tour because it ends in Laurel. This is a picture of a westbound train near Springdale with the crazy mountains in the background with a little dusting of snow on it from the night before. We follow that train west. This is a big curve with the interstate, the railroad, and the Yellowstone River. Those are the crazy mountains in the background. Here we are in 1999, a little further back on the same curve with a BNSF Powder River coal train. And then in October of 2022, this was one of 4 trains we got with some sunlight on it from the same location. What we were doing here is we're heading east because they ran and do run a train from Laurel to Bozeman, again with MRL power. But we'll turn the clock back. This is Springdale. This is where we saw the first shot with the crazy mountains with the snow in the background. This is looking the other direction with the Seattle to Birmingham BN train running on the MRL. Big Timber is a good photo location because of the grain elevators there. little telephoto shot from the same location taken in October of 2022 with another grain train. This is at Reed Point, another scenic elevator, no longer in use. This is an eastbound empty oil train. There's actually two trains put together. So in the middle, you see two buffer cars and then another 100 cars and another buffer on the rear, in addition to the 100 in the front. This is a westbound grain train crossing over the Yellowstone River Bridge just east of Reed Point. And back in May of 2019, we were out on the big boy chase. We made a little visit to the MRL and caught the Laurel to Bozeman local at Columbus along the Yellowstone River. All right, this was the chase train for this last day of our trip in October 22. This is Laurel to Bozeman coming out of Park City, Montana, which is a few miles west of Billings. Here it is at Reed Point. And there's a non-interstate chase road that's paved. Makes it real easy to get to all these locations. Here it is at Quebec, Montana, going through the signals. At Great Cliff, leaning into the curve. And as the sun is about to set, going by the elevators at Big Timber, Montana. And a pacing shot of a GP35 at East Bozeman will end our tour. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Jim. Very nice.
Thank you. Yes,
You're
very good.
welcome.
Very nice.